For 95% of human history, there were no cities, no laws, no money, no bosses, no alarm clocks. And yet somehow our ancestors were often less stressed, less anxious, and according to some anthropologists, happier than we are right now, typing on glass screens in climate-controlled rooms. So here's the question that should terrify you a little. If humans thrived for 300,000 years without any of the things you think you need to survive, what exactly is civilization giving you? And what has it quietly taken away? Every single person watching this carries an ancient brain wrapped in a modern life. Your fear of public speaking? That's a leftover survival instinct from a time when being watched by the group could mean exile, and exile meant death. Your addiction to your phone? That's the same dopamine circuit that once rewarded your ancestors for finding a beehive full of honey. We didn't evolve for spreadsheets, rent, or Wi-Fi. We evolved for something else entirely, something we've almost completely forgotten how to do. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your brain still runs on Stone Age software, why loneliness feels like physical pain, and why the primitive humans who came before us may have understood happiness better than we ever will. Let's go back, way back. Close your eyes and picture a caveman. What do you see? Probably someone hunched over, grunting, dragging a club, barely surviving. That image is almost entirely fiction, and it was invented for a reason. In the 1600s, people were still living in caves. They were not the brutal caveman that you see in movies. It's invented for a reason. In the 1600s, philosopher Thomas Hobbes described early human life as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. That single sentence shaped how the Western world imagined prehistory for the next 400 years. But here's the twist. Hobbes never met a single hunter-gatherer. He wrote that description from a chair in London, imagining what life must have been like without government control. Anthropologists who actually studied surviving hunter-gatherer societies, like the Hadza of Tanzania or the Kung of the Kalahari, found something shocking. These groups worked an average of 15 to 20 hours a week to meet their needs. Compare that to the average 40-plus hour work week most of us grind through today, on top of commuting, chores, and screen time. They had more leisure time than we do. Anthropologist Marshall Solins even called early humans the original affluent society, not because they had more stuff, but because they wanted less. But if life was that manageable, why do we imagine it as constant terror? Because civilization needed us to believe it. Here's something wild. Your brain has a hard limit on how many real relationships it can maintain. British anthropologist Robin Dunbar discovered this by studying primate brain size and social group size. His finding, now called Dunbar's number, suggests the human brain can only handle around 150 stable relationships at once. Not 150 followers, not 150 contacts, 150 people you actually know, trust, and could rely on in a crisis. For most of human history, that number wasn't a limitation, it was the entire world. You knew everyone in your band. You knew their children, their fears, their stories. Everyone had a role. Everyone was seen. Now flip to today. The average person has hundreds of digital friends and thousands of followers. Yet loneliness has been called an epidemic by public health officials in multiple countries. Your brain evolved to feel safe in a village. Instead, you're standing in a crowd of strangers, and it doesn't know how to process that. It reads the anonymity of modern life as a threat, because for 300,000 years, being surrounded by people you didn't know usually meant danger, not networking. That's only one piece of the puzzle. What scientists discovered about ancient decision-making is even stranger. Why does your heart race before a job interview? Why do you replay an awkward conversation at 2 a.m.? Blame your amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure buried deep in your brain that hasn't updated its threat detection system in tens of thousands of years. To your amygdala, a critical email from your boss and a rustling bush that might contain a predator trigger almost identical alarm signals. Cortisol floods your system, your muscles tense, your focus narrows. In the ancestral world, this response was brilliant. A false alarm about a lion cost you a few wasted seconds. A missed real alarm cost you your life. So evolution built us to be overcautious rather than undercautious. Better safe than eaten. But here's the psychological paradox. Modern threats aren't physical anymore. They're social and abstract. A text left on read, a negative comment, a looming deadline. Your body can't tell the difference, so it reacts with the same ancient intensity meant for a saber-toothed cat. This is why anxiety feels so disproportionate to modern problems. It's not broken, it's just decades, no, millennia out of date. And this mismatch runs even deeper than fear. It shapes how we see each other. For most of human history, the concept of a total stranger barely existed. Hunter-gatherer bands were small, usually 20 to 50 people, nested inside a larger tribal network of a few hundred. You might not know every person in that network personally, but you knew someone who knew them. Reputation traveled fast, and trust was built face-to-face over a lifetime. Then agriculture happened. About 12,000 years ago, humans began farming instead of foraging. Suddenly, permanent settlements formed. Populations exploded. For the first time ever, humans were living beside people they had no personal history with. No shared hunts, no shared fires, no accumulated trust. This single shift may be one of the most psychologically disruptive events in our species' history. Historian Yuval Noah Harari has argued that large-scale cooperation between total strangers only became possible through shared myths, religion, money, nations, laws. These aren't physical things. They're collective stories we all agreed to believe in, so millions of strangers could cooperate without killing each other. In other words, civilization isn't built on trust. It's built on fiction we've all agreed to treat as fact. That single realization changes how you should look at literally everything around you right now. Your money, your government, your job title. But it also explains something even more personal. Why silence and stillness make so many of us uncomfortable. Try this. Put your phone in another room for 1 hour and do absolutely nothing. For most people, this feels almost physically uncomfortable within minutes. A famous 2014 study published in Science asked participants to sit alone in a room with nothing to do except think, or press a button to give themselves a mild electric shock. Astonishingly, a significant number of people, especially men, chose to shock themselves rather than sit with their own thoughts. Why would boredom be so intolerable that people prefer pain? Because early humans were never actually bored in the way we are. Even during rest, ancestral life was filled with subtle sensory engagement, tracking animals, reading weather patterns, storytelling around a fire, weaving, tool-making. The brain was always gently occupied, never overstimulated, and never fully empty. Modern life gave us the opposite problem. We swing between extreme overstimulation, notifications, feeds, alerts, and sudden total emptiness the moment the screen goes dark. Our brains never learned how to sit in that in-between space, because that space barely used to exist. This explains why silence can feel almost like withdrawal. It is withdrawal from stimulation your ancestors never experienced in the first place. But the story of what civilization gave us isn't all warning signs. Some of what we gained was extraordinary, and it came from something surprisingly small. Roughly 1 million years ago, something happened that changed the trajectory of the human mind forever. We learned to control fire. Fire didn't just provide warmth and protection, it gave early humans something they never had before: hours of safe darkness with nothing to do but talk. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied modern hunter-gatherer campfire conversations and found something remarkable. During the day, conversations were mostly practical. Claire, who found food, who needs help, logistics. But at night, around the fire, conversations shifted almost entirely to storytelling, myths, gossip, and imagination. Some researchers believe this nightly ritual is where human imagination, religion, and complex language accelerated. Firelight created the world's first classroom, therapy session, and theater all at once. Every movie you've ever watched, every conspiracy theory, every bedtime story, every piece of gossip you've ever shared, all of it may trace back to humans sitting around a flame with nothing else to do but talk. Civilization didn't invent storytelling. Fire did. Civilization just moved the fire into a screen. But if fire gave us imagination, the next shift gave us something we're still struggling to recover from. The day work became a cage. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone. Agriculture, often taught as humanity's greatest leap forward, may have actually made life worse for most people who lived through it. Skeletal evidence from early farming communities shows something disturbing: shorter height, worse teeth, higher rates of infectious disease, and more skeletal stress from repetitive labor compared to hunter-gatherers who came before them. Jared Diamond, in a widely discussed essay, called agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Farming allowed populations to grow, yes, but it also chained people to fixed land, repetitive tasks, and single crops that failed catastrophically during droughts. Hunter-gatherers who faced a bad season could simply move. Farmers, tied to their fields, often couldn't. This is also roughly when hierarchy as we know it was born. When food could be stored, someone had to control the storage. When land had value, someone had to own it. Wealth inequality, barely present in hunter-gatherer societies, exploded almost overnight in evolutionary terms. The psychological effect lingers today. Studies on modern hunter-gatherer societies consistently show flatter social hierarchies and stronger resistance to bossy or dominant behavior within the group. Anyone who tried to act superior was often mocked or excluded until they adjusted. We, on the other hand, built entire economic systems around obeying hierarchy, and then wonder why burnout, powerlessness, and resentment toward authority feel so universal. Which brings us to the final, most uncomfortable question of all. Civilization gave us medicine, safety from famine, art on a massive scale, and the ability to reach across oceans to have a conversation with people we'll never meet in person. It also gave us chronic stress hormones with nowhere to discharge, relationships stretched thin across too many people, work disconnected from visible purpose, and identities built on status instead of belonging. Neither world was perfect. Early humans faced disease, violence, and unpredictable death without modern medicine to save them. We are not meant to romanticize the past blindly, but understanding it reveals something crucial about the present. Many of the emotional struggles we treat as personal failures, anxiety, loneliness, restlessness, burnout, aren't malfunctions. They're a 300,000-year-old brain trying to run software it was never designed for. Here is the final thought. Civilization didn't rewrite your brain. It just changed the world around a brain that's still, biologically, standing by a fire, scanning the tree line, and counting the faces of the 150 people it trusts most. Every time you feel overwhelmed by too many notifications, too many strangers, too much noise, and not enough stillness, that's not weakness. That's ancient wiring meeting a world it never evolved to handle. The greatest mystery of human history isn't how we built cities, laws, or economies. It's how much of the caveman still lives quietly inside every single one of us, waiting, watching, and wondering where the fire went.